Hey, what's up? I hope you hear me. Hopefully this is working. Scott, hello. Can you hear me? Drop a comment if you can. This is my first time playing around on YouTube Live. We're going to try something a little bit new here today. Awesome. Sounds like you can hear me. So I want to jump into the video right away while people are kind of joining on. We'll see who jumps in here with any questions about Salt Lake. But I wanted to start the video off with a little bit of a market update, just considering everything that's going on with the pandemic and the global outbreak that we're experiencing right now. Salt Lake hasn't been affected as much as I think a lot of people kind of expected. I know that the other parts of the country, especially like New York, California, Florida, are getting hammered right now, and it's pretty bad in those areas. We do have an increase in cases here in Salt Lake City and the state overall. So we're kind of in the same boat, but as far as the real estate market goes, the market has been on fire still. It's been kind of crazy. We've been going through a little bit of a shift because of everything going on. The sales that are happening are way down. I'm looking at some statistics over on my other screen here. For the month of March, we actually had 2,500 sales. This is for Salt Lake, Utah, and Davis counties, these three main counties along the Wasatch Front. So I'm just looking at data for these three counties. There's no price range criteria or single family homes or condos. I'm just looking at everything here. So 2,500 sales in March. And we had an average sales price to list price of 99%. That means on average, homes were selling for just barely under what they were listed for. Also, days on market was roughly 15 days, which is pretty typical for that time of year. Looking back at last year, it was roughly the same, a little bit higher, 25 days in March, but then dropped to 17 days on market in April of 2019. So April of this year, we had 2,300 sales. So usually we have a huge increase. We'll be over 3,000 sales in April most typically. But for April this year, we just had 2,300 sales. So the number of sales that we experienced was down about 25%. I think that's because the state shut down in March, and that's when a lot of people were getting concerned about what was going to happen as far as, nobody knew what was going on. So a lot of people canceled their contracts. A lot of people pulled their home from the market and didn't want to sell it. So looking at some other information here, ironically enough, even though the number of sales went down, we had only 2,300 sales in these three counties. We actually had an increase in the price that they were actually selling for. They were actually selling for 101% of the actual listing price. So on average, they were selling for more than what they were actually listed for. Days on market was down to 10 in April. Looking at May, we have a full month's worth of data here. We're back up to 2,700 sales. And again, the sales price to list price was at 100%. This means that we haven't seen any drop in prices. The actual average price has fluctuated roughly between $350,000 and $355,000. That's kind of the median there. So we haven't seen a huge increase or decrease in sales for these last couple of months. It's just been for the prices, I should say, as far as the number of sales, it is down from where it's normally at this time of year. So number of sales is down, but the prices have not been affected at all. Days on market for May was 15. So we don't have full data for June, but so far it's looking like sales will also be down. The number of sales that we actually have, the prices will actually creep up. We're seeing that because there's such low inventory, there's not a whole lot that's on the market. We're seeing more competition for the number of properties that are actually out there. So we're seeing more offers going in, and that's pushing the price up and up. I've been to numerous showings lately where there's literally a line out the door of people waiting to get in, and they've ended up with 10, 15, even 20 offers on one single property. So the market, if the home is priced right, it's in a good neighborhood, it's in good shape, it is flying off the shelf. So it's kind of crazy. So just wanted to share some thoughts about kind of the market, where I think it's going. We talked a little bit about where it is now and where it has been for the last couple of months, but where it's going in the future, it's going to be, I think we're going to continue to see this. I think as the economy kind of opens back up, we're going to see that the number of sales will continue to increase and hopefully go back up, which will help with some of the demand that's out there. And we're also going to see that the days on market will stay low and that prices will probably continue to creep up. I think that Utah is so well positioned to recover from the pandemic that we're in that there's going to be there's going to be such strong growth that we're not going to see any drop in prices. Who knows? There's a lot of people in forbearance and the mortgage issue with their, late on payments and whatnot. So we'll see how that turns out, if there's going to be foreclosures or not, or maybe even more properties hitting the market, just because a lot of these people who may be in distress probably have a lot of equity in their property. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, so that's kind of where I see the market going. I think prices will continue to increase slightly. It's not going to go up at the same rate it has, but I think it will continue going up. And I think that the number of sales will continue going up as well. Sorry about that noise. If you guys can hear that, somebody's pounding on the stairs upstairs. I don't know why, but anyway, let's jump into some questions here. So real quick, Bobby says, you're from New York. Do you do rentals or just sell? I actually do just sell real estate here in Utah. It's not commonplace for real estate agents to have a hand in the rental game. I'm always happy to help give you some guidance as far as good areas, good neighborhoods, if you're paying the right amount in rent, if it's a fair market rent. I'm always happy to give guidance on that. But as far as the actual process of setting that up, I don't have a hand in that because it's fairly easy for you to just contact the landlord or property manager directly and just set that process up with them. So still reach out if you're looking to rent here. I'm always happy to help give you some guidance. That's part of what I love. I love helping people make this transition. So still get in touch with me, even if you're just looking to rent for the first year or 6 months or even short term. There's a lot of different options. Scott's got a question. What are your thoughts on Eagle Mountain? So the thing that you need to know about Eagle Mountain is there's actually two areas of Eagle Mountain. You have, if you pull it up on a map, you'll see that Eagle Mountain is a little bit further out southwest. And that's considered Eagle Mountain City Center, whereas the other side of Eagle Mountain, which is the ranches, is just to the northwest of Saratoga Springs. So Eagle Mountain City Center is pretty far out there. It's super cheap, but it is mostly residential. I mean, I've got a sister-in-law who lives out there, and there's literally like just houses. There's 2 or 3 restaurants, I think. There's a gas station and 1 elementary school. I mean, there's no Walmart, there's no Home Depot, there's no Costco for sure. There's nothing like that out there. So if you're, if you want something cheap, you want the best bang for your buck, that is the place to go, is out to Eagle Mountain City Center. If you want, but I should mention that you're going to be, you're out there quite a ways. I mean, it's 15, 20 minutes into town type of thing just to get to some of your day-to-day, restaurants or shops or whatever you need. So that's City Center there. The other thing is Eagle Mountain, the ranches, which is a little bit closer into town. It's more developed. It's a little bit better. In my opinion, it is also a little bit more expensive, but that's kind of the trade-off. You're going to get newer homes there. It's growing like crazy. There's tons of builders there, tons of opportunity. And I think that because of the tech scene that's, blowing up in Utah County and the southern part of Salt Lake County, a lot of people are choosing to go west just because it is cheaper. It's not as developed, but it's a cheaper option for, growth in the coming years, just because there's so much land out there and it's cheaper to build. So, do you see it growing soon? Yes, I do, Scott. If you watch my video on the population for Utah County, it's expected to over double or more than double over the next 30 years. So there's going to be a ton of growth there. Everything kind of along the I-15 corridor, which is on the eastern side, right on the front of the Wasatch Mountains. The most of that is developed. There's not a ton of land there. I mean, of course, there's still lots and still a lot of building going on. But when it comes to raw land that's out there, there's, most of it is in the Eagle Mountain or even Saratoga Springs areas, west of Utah Lake. So I think that that's probably where a good, 60 to 70% of the growth will actually happen. Austin mentioned Utah County growing faster than Salt Lake County over the next few decades. Is this good or bad? If we're planning on buying our first home in Salt Lake County, Salt Lake City, I assume, in the next couple of years. It honestly depends, man. I think when you're looking at appreciation, Salt Lake County does have the benefit of being in the downtown area, or I should say the more established area. So it's going to continue to appreciate at the level that it already has because most of the land there is already gone. There's not a whole lot of land left except from the very western side of the county. So There's not a ton of land left there. If you're looking Utah County, there's going to be a ton of growth there. So if you can get into an area that's kind of already developed, I think especially in a home that's somewhat newer, you're also going to see some massive appreciation there. Is it good or bad news? I don't know, man. It kind of depends on how you look at it. If it's purely from a financial standpoint, I think you're going to be paying a little bit more if you're going into Salt Lake County. If you're looking for lifestyle or anything like that, I think one thing that you have to be aware of is that in Utah County, there's going to be massive growing pains. There already has been over the last 10 years, tons of people who are really, really upset with how the infrastructure has been put in, just because it's growing so quickly that a lot of the infrastructure, the roads, the parking lots, stuff like that, just can't accommodate the growth. And so they're trying to catch up. They're rebuilding the whole I-15 interstate system in the Lehigh area. So just a ton of construction going on. And that's something that's going to be constant in Utah County over the next 30 years. So it really just depends how you look at it. It's tough to say if it's good or bad news. There's a lot of factors. So let's see. Jack's got a question. Can I do a video about the development of the tech and finance industries in Salt Lake City? Yeah, you bet, Jack. I'd love to do something like that. Maybe drop a follow-up comment, if you would, about what you'd like to see specifically, whether it's just kind of locations or the buildings. I do plan to do a video that's specifically on, what they would consider the Silicon Slopes, which is everything from basically Draper all the way down to Provo. There's a ton of tech companies in there. We've got everything from Adobe to Pluralsight, Podium. Facebook has a data center there, and a bunch of other tech companies that a lot of people have never heard of too, that are, massive companies. So a lot of people moving here for those tech jobs, and a lot of growth and potential with those jobs as well. Scott has a question about new construction versus existing houses. Can you help with new construction? Yes, I do new construction, and it's something that I would highly recommend if you're choosing to build something that, whether I don't, it's kind of weird for me to say, but like at the very least, if you're going to build something here in Salt Lake, you definitely use an agent. I'd hope that'd be me. I'd love to help you with that process. But trying to build a house, and if you're not physically living here in the state, there's a lot of different things that you need to be aware of, with the build itself. Make sure everything's going in as it should be, making sure that you're choosing everything in the house that you want to be there, and make sure that you're paying a good price for it. I see a lot of builders who are overcharging for stuff just simply for the fact that they can, because there's a lot of people out there who want to build and they want to pay, they're willing to pay for something because they get the option of building, but they end up overpaying for things like blinds or kitchen upgrades or basement finishes, stuff like that. And so it's really just, you have to be careful with new construction, because it's an easy way. If you don't know kind of what the market is and what the market can handle as far as like labor costs and materials, a lot of times you can do those things after the fact and save a ton of money. So new construction, that's kind of my thought there. As far as like, me helping you, I'd be happy to do that. New construction versus existing houses. I think that, the thing with new construction is no matter what, you're always going to pay a premium just because you get to choose everything with the house and because it's brand new. It's kind of like buying a new car. You do pay a little bit of a premium, but you get the benefit of having a house or a car that nobody has ever used or lived in. So there's a ton of benefits to going with new construction. You get to choose the colors that you want. You get to choose the outside design. You get to choose if you want a third car garage or not. There's a ton of different things you can add in there, which are nice to have. If you're going new construction, you are going to pay a little bit more versus, compared to an existing home. So I think those are the things to kind of consider there, Scott. If you want to have a little bit more of that customization, you're okay paying, let's say maybe 5% more in order to have that, and you plan to stay there for the long term, then new construction is probably a great option. If you just want to have something, if you've been looking at homes on the market and you've seen stuff that you've liked that's already out there, then perhaps you just buy something that's already existing. I would say try to keep it within the last, 4 to 5 years, just to make sure that the style is still in, because once you start approaching 9 years old, 10 years old, 12, 15 years old, that's when it starts to come up with a lot of the older style and update your style and colors. A lot of the tans and the golds that we used to see, kind of back in the mid to late 2000s. So just watch out for that, because it's going to make it hard for resale. It's not going to fetch as good of a price if you try to sell it sometime down the road. If you decide to keep it and rent it, same thing, it's going to be harder to rent. So I would say, if you want to go existing, try to keep it newer if you can. Of course, if you're like in Salt Lake, there's no problem buying a house that's built in the 1960s and 1970s. You're going to find a ton of those, especially in Salt Lake County. So it really just depends. Those homes will have been remodeled. It just kind of depends on what fits your style and also your lifestyle. Those are some important factors. Elton's got a question, but I believe it's in Portuguese, so I can't read that. Maybe you can put that in Google Translate and repost it, man. I'd appreciate that. Scott, hope I answered your question. Let me know if you've got other questions. Shoot me an email or a text, or even just drop it in a comment box. I'll be here. So, Jack, video covering the Silicon Slopes, kind of like we talked about. What specific locations are popular for business to move and expand to? What specific areas do individuals that work in tech and finance move to? So a lot of the tech industry, like I mentioned, is between Draper and Provo. Because we have such short travel times here in Salt Lake. I mean, you can get from literally downtown Salt Lake all the way to Draper, even though it's a pretty long distance. I think it's roughly 30 miles. You can travel that, as long as traffic is good, in roughly 30 minutes, so it's not a ton. It's not like other major cities where if you're trying to go, 5 miles, it can take you 45 minutes. It's a lot shorter here. So it makes it easier to get around, so people move further out. So to kind of answer your question as far as like what areas do these people move to, a lot of it depends on like price range. If you're looking for something that's higher end and in a great neighborhood, a lot of people are moving to Lehigh because it's very central, it's very established. There's a ton of great homes there. Depending on where you're at, you can get awesome mountain views or even views of the Utah Lake. A lot of people are also going to Saratoga Springs, especially if you're in like that 400 to 500 or even 600,000 range. Saratoga Springs is a great option because you're across, you're on the west side of Utah Lake, and most areas you can get awesome views of the Wasatch Mountains and Utah Lake as well. So that's kind of where a lot of people are moving. I would say that if you want to go north, you want to have a little bit more diversity. Draper is a very popular option as well. It's still close to that tech scene. It's close to the finance scene, which a lot of the finance is more downtown Salt Lake. It's a little bit of a travel there, but Draper is very popular. A lot of Draper was kind of developed in the 90s and early 2000s. There's still a ton of new construction going in Draper, especially once the prison site is torn down. There's going to be a lot of development there, but Draper is a super popular option as well. They've got homes there ranging from, $300,000 for a small townhome all the way up to $1 million plus. So it really kind of depends on the price range that you're looking in. And again, it always comes back to lifestyle. And I try to push that so much on the channel here when talking about Salt Lake, because it's definitely the biggest factor. It's not like you've got access to so much stuff outdoors that if you want to be close to skiing, that's going to kind of dictate where you want to live. If you want to live out in the desert because you like to ride dirt bikes, then that's going to dictate where you want to live as well. If you're more into the city life, then that's something to consider. So, those are kind of the main factors that comes to when looking for, people to, or what city to live in. Jack, to answer the other half of your question, what specific locations are popular for business? Yeah, so kind of all along that corridor. I mean, it depends on the business. That's the area that's growing the most, is kind of the Draper and Lehigh area, and even down into like American Fork and Pleasant Grove. That's where most of the new office buildings are going. So if you're, within 15, 20 minutes of there, you've got a ton of growth potential on the residential side or even commercial. Austin's got a question. Is there a suburb of Salt Lake City that'd be ideal for a younger couple without kids, trying to get a feel of potential spots outside the city as well? Austin, the area that's probably the most prominent for younger individuals, people who are single, or people who don't have kids or don't want kids, is definitely going to be any of the surrounding areas around Salt Lake. Sugar House and Mill Creek are the first two neighborhoods that come to mind when thinking about this, just because there's, it's kind of more the hip area to live. It's very walkable. It's very, there's a lot to do, especially for adults. There's a lot of entertainment there. There's a lot of nightlife there. So definitely more variety in those areas, Sugar House or Mill Creek. Once you get further out into the suburbs, it does become more family focused. But definitely check out Sugar House or Mill Creek. Let me know if you have already and you're looking for another alternative, and maybe we can elaborate on that a little bit further. Bobby apparently knows Portuguese, asking if we build homes with wood and the tech companies are in Lehigh. Yes, tech companies are in Lehigh. And yes, I guess they do build homes out of wood and concrete. North Salt Lake. So Elton's got a question about North Salt Lake. Jack, thanks for the info. Appreciate your time. Happy to help, Jack. Let me know if you have other questions. Talking a little bit about North Salt Lake. So North Salt Lake is very close proximity to downtown Salt Lake. It's only about 10, 15 minutes north, and it's just barely starting to see some development. They did have some environmental concerns there a couple of years ago, or in the past. That's why it hasn't seen as much development as some of these other areas. So something to kind of consider there. There was actually a natural deposit of sulfur. And if you don't know, sulfur smells like rotten eggs. So sometimes as you're driving through certain sections of North Salt Lake, you'll just get this strong smell of rotten eggs. And so nobody ever wanted to live there. It was just a natural thing in the ground. It wasn't like somebody put it there or anything. It was just, kind of a turnoff for a lot of people. So I actually haven't noticed that very much recently. So I don't know if they went in and mined it and moved it or took care of it or covered it over. I don't know how that works. But North Salt Lake is growing. It's very close to downtown. I think that the other thing you have to be aware of in North Salt Lake is that the water table is higher because it is close to the Great Salt Lake. So you're going to see a higher water table there. It's going to be less common to find basements in North Salt Lake. You'll find a lot of stuff that's on ground level or above. Not necessarily a problem, but they're just not building basements there because the water level comes up too high. North Salt Lake is also going to be lacking a little bit of the business and commercial side. There's not a lot that's there other than just residential properties. Most of the people who are going to live there are going to work somewhere in Bountiful, which is to the north, or they're going to work in downtown Salt Lake, possibly the airport, possibly the new prison that's coming to Western Salt Lake City. Those are going to be the areas that people are going to be working if you're living in North Salt Lake. So for proximity to downtown, it's huge. Other than that, there's not much there as far as like commercial and business development. So there's really a ton of areas that are growing. North Salt Lake is one of them. Harriman down south is growing like crazy. Eagle Mountain, Saratoga Springs, a lot of these areas. There's a lot of growth going there, and it's the cheap place to go. So what other questions do you guys have? Drop a comment if you got a question. I appreciate you guys stopping by to check this out. Let me know if this is something that's helpful for you. Like I said, this is my first time doing YouTube live. So still trying to adjust to this type of video. There's going to be another video on schools coming out later this week. I'll probably release that one on Friday. So if you want to know about the schools in Salt Lake County, stay tuned for that one. We're going to be doing a video, tons of videos planned for the western side of Salt Lake County. If you want to learn more about Harriman, South Jordan, Riverton, Bluffdale, those videos are all coming. I've been so busy. A ton of you guys have been reaching out, moving here, asking questions. I've been busier than ever despite everything going on, and just have been basically trying to keep up with all the videos and getting them out there. So a lot happening here in the market. Super grateful for it. I love when you guys reach out and chat with me. But there are new videos coming. There's going to be a lot of videos, like I said, about Western Salt Lake County, and then just kind of spreading out from there. So the main area that I work is Salt Lake, but I'm going to work everything from Ogden all the way to Provo, even beyond occasionally. If you reach out and you're looking for something outside of that range, I'll be happy to help you. I just try to focus on Salt Lake just because that's closest to me and makes the most sense for the area that I know. So we're going to have videos on that, and then we're going to start expanding into Utah County more, just because there's so much happening there. There's a ton of people going there. A lot of people are asking about Provo and other areas there. And then we're also going to be talking more about Park City over the next couple months. So if you're interested in Park City and what to do up there, there'll be videos coming out for that. Hazel Eyes. Me and my husband are trying to move to Utah by September. That sounds awesome. Right now, one thing that you should know about the Utah weather, we've actually had really good weather these last couple of weeks. It's been, not quite as hot as it normally is. Usually in this time of June, we're hitting, mid to high 90s. But recently, today I think it's 90 degrees outside, and it's supposed to get a little hot tomorrow. But like the last couple of weeks, it's been, high 80s, which is really quite reasonable, especially when it's dry climate like we have here. So let's see. Yeah, kind of afraid about the pandemic shutting everything down. So they have seen an uptick in the number of cases, but luckily the death count hasn't gone up from that. So, who knows if they're going to shut things down again? I really hope they don't, because it's going to cause a lot of economic damage. And that's, not great either. So who knows what's going to happen in the state as far as like normal day-to-day life. We still have a ton of people working from home here, just because they've kind of transitioned to that with their family, or excuse me, they're not with their family, with their work. And so a lot of people working from home. And other than that, though, it's pretty much business as usual. It seems like people are kind of back to their normal day-to-day lives. People are eating out at restaurants. I went out to a restaurant with my wife and my mom last night. We just went out and had dinner. It was awesome. It was kind of weird to do that. I've only done that once or twice since everything opened back up. So a little bit weird to do that, but, definitely something that's nice to get back to that's that comfortable feeling that we're all used to. Scott, average pay for tech jobs. Yeah, it really depends, man. I think if you're kind of more on like the software side, of software development, or you're an engineer or something like that, it could be anywhere from probably 70,000 up to 120,000. That would be my guess. I'm no expert. I haven't looked into the actual pay, but just from kind of, talking to people, I think that's roughly where it is for those types of jobs. If you're on the sales side, which a lot of people are, that can be anywhere from $100,000 to $200,000 in those industries. So sales, you can make a little bit more. It's a little bit difficult. That's a sales job, of course. But for software development, software engineer, or any other tech job, it's going to be along those lines. Probably 70 to 120,000 would be my guess for most of the jobs out there. Let's see. You're from New York. It's pretty hot here now. It's super humid. Yeah. Great thing I love about Utah is it's very dry. So even when it gets hot, it's very manageable. You're not sweating as soon as you walk outside the door. So that's super nice. Even when it's 100 degrees, it's kind of one of those things you go stand under a tree in the shade and cool off. And it's pretty manageable. It's not something you just want to sit in the sun, of course, but really not too bad. So I think that July and August, they're going to be hot, just like normal, 90 and 100 degrees even. Sometimes we creep over 100 degrees. So we'll see how that goes. Down at night, it cools down generally to the high 60s or low 70s during the summer months. And then by, September and October, it's starting to cool off as we move into the fall months. So Scott, I hope that answers your question about tech jobs. Let me know if you have any other further questions. Let's talk a little bit more about Salt Lake. So other things you want to know about what's happening in the county here. The prison is moving along. The prison site that they're building, the new prison, I think it's not supposed to be done for a couple of years, but it is progressing and getting there. So something to keep an eye on there if you're thinking about moving. It's kind of out in the middle of nowhere, so there's not a ton of houses out there where they're building it. It is west of the airport. It's kind of on the Great Salt Lake beach, if you will. But there's really nothing out there. So the important thing to look for there is kind of the development that's going to happen around the Draper area. And then also the development on the airport. The first phase is actually, I don't know if it's been set back because of the pandemic. All the travel has disappeared, but they were slated to actually open the first phase, I believe in September. So it's very, very close for that new airport, which is great because our airport here is pretty dinky. If you've ever flown through, the old airport is not attractive at all. It was built in like the 1960s. So this airport update is definitely overdue and something that needs to happen. So first phase in a couple months here. And then the second phase, I believe, is slated for sometime next year. That's going to be super exciting. It's going to help with ticket prices. Hopefully we'll get, more planes coming through, and that will help drive ticket prices down, which will make it easier to fly into and fly out of and give more flight options once we get everything back to normal. All right, let's jump back into question. Austin asks, are there any suburbs trying to remodel their downtown areas currently, trying to make it more walkable, et cetera? Yeah, Holiday, I understand what you're saying. Holiday did do that type of like a Main Street remodel where they did add in a lot of shops. They kind of rearranged the road. I believe they have like a food truck night. So they did do that in Holiday. There's also going to be the Holiday Hills development, I believe is what it's called, for where the old Cottonwood Mall is. That's going to be, I think that, that's like 50 or 60 acres. I can't remember off the top of my head. It's a huge piece of land that's going to be developed to be more walkable like that as well. So those areas specifically in Holiday are going through that. The other areas that come to mind is Sandy. Sandy does have some development, especially around the Southtown Mall, or what they call the shops at Southtown now. That's one of the major malls in the area there. It is becoming more walkable there, and kind of in the downtown Sandy area. There's a lot of walkable options. That's where Rio Tinto Stadium is at, which is where Real Salt Lake, the soccer team, plays. So they've got movie theaters there, restaurants. They're trying to make that, much more walkable, where you can go there, you can walk to the restaurant, and then you can walk to the game after, and then walk to a bar and kind of get around a little bit better that way. So Sandy's one city that comes to mind. Lehigh, same thing. Provo, downtown Provo is definitely getting more, more walkable. Let's see. Trying to think. Harriman is not necessarily going through like a remodel, but there's a ton of commercial development going in there. And I think they do kind of have the idea that they want to make it walkable so that when you kind of, the hard thing with suburbs is everything is so spread out. It's not like a major city where you can just kind of walk out your front door and just, go down the street and have access to all these shops or anything. So it's very suburban, but I think they're kind of setting it up so you can drive there and then have access to everything that you want without having to, jump in your car and drive around, from each store to store type of thing. So hopefully that answers your question, Austin. You've got Hazel Eyes questions about job prospects and recruiting firms. I know that a lot of different companies have put they've kind of done a hiring freeze. I know that they're still out there looking for prospects, especially in the tech space, healthcare space. They're growing like crazy right now. And so there's no shortage of demand for those types of jobs. There's still a lot of companies looking for employees. It's just a little bit different because they, because of the pandemic and the travel restrictions and everything going on with that, it's just adjusted a little bit because of, it doesn't make sense to like bring somebody in and tell them to move here when everything's going on. So that's kind of, slowed down from where it was a couple months ago, or let's say last year. But as far as I know, companies are still hiring, especially for some of those jobs that you can do work from home or have some flexibility with not needing to go into the office every day. I haven't seen any change in employment. Of course, jobs have been lost. From my perspective, I think most of those jobs have kind of been on the lower end, unfortunately. The entry level jobs, a lot of like healthcare, or excuse me, not healthcare, a lot of hotel jobs, a lot of the travel industry jobs for cleaning, restaurant jobs. Some of those entry level jobs have kind of disappeared, and they haven't come back yet. But when you get up into the higher tier jobs, as far as I know, they're still out there and still looking for prospects. Austin, I hope that was helpful for you. Let me know if you got other questions. Elton's got a question about the Mormon religion having influence on housing market prices and land. Not really, not directly anyway. There's the Mormon Church does own a lot of property for their meeting houses, their churches that they own, but it doesn't have any effect on the housing market or land or pricing or anything like that. So when it comes to the market itself, there's not much to worry about there. There's a that's what I'm going to say on that topic. All right, let's see what other questions we've got. So while I'm waiting for more questions, see if any more come through. I was talking about the airport. That phase is going through. There's a lot of development happening in the downtown area. We've got a couple of new high-rise luxury condos that are coming. I think there's 1 or 2 buildings that are going to be built over the next couple of years. Austin, if you're still there, also some major development is also happening in Sugar House. Kind of the downtown Sugar House area has also seen some more walkability. It was already very walkable, but they just built a new healthcare center there. I think it's a hospital or a rehab center that's pretty massive, and there's new apartments going up all over there in Sugar House as well. So downtown in Sugar House is definitely becoming more high density. We're seeing a lot of older properties get torn down, a lot of older commercial properties as well being torn down and converted into apartment buildings or condos or townhomes. So a lot of that happening in the downtown area, especially as downtown becomes more residential. I think that will continue to evolve. I read somewhere in a statistic that downtown Salt Lake over the last 20 years has become the number of residents who live in downtown Salt Lake has increased by 70%. So a pretty massive increase over just the last 20 years. And I think it will continue going that way. It's not necessarily single family homes anymore like it has been in the past. A lot of these people are moving into condos, apartments, and townhomes. So a lot of growth happening there. Let's see. Nancy has a question. I'm sure this is a question for my accountant, but I thought I'd see if if I'm moving from California and have an LLC in California, that is definitely a question for your accountant. I do not know. I wish I gave more guidance, but I don't know if you're going to have to re-register. I think it depends on how you're doing business as well. I wouldn't be qualified to answer that, honestly. I don't want to point you in the wrong way. Austin, thanks. Sugar House is on the top of our list. Man, Sugar House is great. I think, honestly, Sugar House is probably an area that I would consider. The only thing that I personally have a kind of a tough time with is just the older homes. Maybe I like older homes. I think they have a ton of character, but I personally like stuff that's a little bit newer. It's just kind of my taste, something a little bit bigger. I like to kind of have my space for my own, my own living space. But as far as like living somewhere with easy access, Sugar House is probably the top of the list. If you want to have somewhere that's walkable, you want to have close access to downtown, you want to have access to the canyons, Sugar House is definitely up there. Most of the homes that or apartments or townhomes, anything you're looking at there can range anywhere from 800 square feet to 2,000, maybe 2,500. They do have bigger homes in that area, but then you start going way up in price range because you pay a premium for that. So just something to keep in mind. If that's enough space for you, then perfect. I think Sugar House is awesome. Tons of character there, which I love. That's kind of one of the downsides to where I live in Sandy. Not as much character as you'd find in Sugar House. So that's kind of a bummer. But anyway, I love Sugar House. Great place. He's alive. Would it be feasible to live in Salt Lake and commute to Park City? Yes, there are a number of people who do it. I think for me, it's kind of a long drive. I last year stayed in Park City for a week and actually was commuting to Salt Lake each day to my office. And by the end of the week, I was kind of tired of it. I guess I do enough driving as it is, going out and doing showings and meeting people all around the county, that adding that drive to my morning commute was a little bit much. But there's a lot of people who do it. If you're coming from a big city, I think you said you're in New York. If you're like, New York City or somewhere in the New York, kind of metro area, let's say, I'm sure traffic's crazy there. So you might be used to driving, or commuting, let's say 30 minutes or 45, 60 minutes or more every single day. Then yeah, you can make that drive, whether you're commuting from Salt Lake to Park City or Park City to Salt Lake. Doesn't matter. It's going to be the same either way. Traffic really shouldn't be too bad unless there's like an accident or something. So yeah, you can definitely make that commute, especially if you're like headed into an office. It's not too bad. For me, it was just kind of not something that I loved all that much, just because I had to drive 45 minutes into town, and then I was here, and then I went and drove for another hour or two at showings and different appointments, and then 45 minutes back. It just ended up being a lot. So, Austin, disagree on older homes. No worries, man. To each their own. That's right. Everybody's got a little bit different opinion. Hey, whatever works for you. That's all that matters. I love it. Let's see. Hope the job freeze is lifted soon. Live in New York City. Round trip can be over 2 hours. Anything shorter than that is huge relief. Yeah, 2 hours, man. That's crazy. Definitely not 2 hours. I mean, from Salt Lake to Park City, my guess is if there's no traffic, it's probably about 35, probably 40 to 45 minutes, depending on where you're coming and going to. So definitely not 2 hours unless there's like a major accident or something like that. So commute time is definitely lower. And that could be a good option. The thing to know about Park City is it's a little bit more expensive. So just be prepared for that. But if you, especially in the summer, if you want to get out of the heat, Park City is awesome. It's a great place to live. You're literally in the mountains. It's a smaller ski town. And if you want kind of the slower pace of life on your, nights and weekends, Park City is a great fit for that. Nancy has a question. If I'm looking to rent a townhome, you've seen the monthly rent price can be negotiated. Yes, it can be. I mean, that's a great thing about real estate. Anything can be negotiated. It really comes down to it's more common with private landlords. If you reach out to them, they would be more willing to negotiate on the rental price with you, especially if you have the ability to, let's say, prepay a couple of months, or maybe you give a bigger deposit, or you do month to month. They might be willing to do something like that. I think as a landlord myself, I always look for look for high quality tenants as opposed to somebody who just wants to pay the most. I actually under rent a lot of my rental properties because I'd rather have a high quality tenant who hopefully will stay for a long time and take care of the property rather than just pay a high amount and then move out or, skip town or something like that. So you can negotiate the rent price. It just depends. It's a little bit easier with private landlords. Like I mentioned, property managers, sometimes they just have a set amount and that's that. It really comes down to knowing the market, knowing what the market rent should be. And then, like I said, if you can offer some incentives on one side, by let's say you prepay the first 3 months, then maybe you can knock $25 off, or maybe you can knock $50 off. Maybe you do a bigger deposit, or you do a longer lease term, let's say 2-year lease or something like that. A lot of landlords would be willing to drop the rent price. Just go ahead and ask them. Let's see. New York City, the majority of rental leases are 1 year. Many apartment complexes say leases can be 3, 6, and 9 months on Zillow. In Utah. Is this true? And what are some pros and cons? Yeah. So funny enough, the rental market has still been very strong here, especially in what I would call the private sector, which is kind of anything outside of your big apartment buildings. The market's been very strong. If you own a single family home or a townhome, renting those has been, as long as they're priced right, it's fairly easy to get them filled quickly. But the bigger apartment buildings, especially in the downtown area, they are negotiable on rent and they are negotiable on lease stays because they have vacant units and they don't want to have those units sitting empty. If they're sitting empty, they're not making money for the apartment building and they're losing money each month. So that's not what they want. So they are offering these shorter lease terms. Some of the pros, you can get a shorter lease term. It's great if you're relocating here. You want to move here for, let's say, 3 months or 6 months, get familiar with the area and then decide on somewhere to buy. That's definitely a great option to have that flexibility for a shorter lease. The downside is typically they're going to want you to pay more. Definitely ask about this. Definitely try to negotiate it. It doesn't hurt. The worst I can say is no. So definitely ask about, reducing the rent price that you'd be paying. They will typically try to charge you anywhere from, I've seen $50 to $150 extra if you want to do a shorter lease. I would say it's okay to pay a little bit extra, especially if you want to buy something, you just kind of want to get familiar with the area. Then sure, $50 a month. I mean, that's $300 over the next 6 months. It might be worth it, to have the flexibility to buy something 6 months sooner than if you had done a 1-year lease. So something to kind of consider there. Again, a downside to that is that you have to move twice. You move here, you live here for 6 months in an apartment, and then you got to move again when you buy something. So, for some people that's fine. Other people are like, no way, I do not want to move across the country just have to move again in 6 months. That does not sound fun, and I can't blame them. So a lot of the people who reach out to me actually end up buying right away. I've got a very good system to help you buy something comfortably in making that move here. So if that works for you, then great. All right, let's see. Nancy, question: what qualities am I looking for in a tenant? It tells you they'd be a good tenant. So the main thing I'm looking for, funny enough, ironically for myself, I'm always looking for somebody who's communicative, somebody who inquires about a property and asks questions about it and actually wants to see it and find out what my criteria is. That's kind of the first thing. So just I don't know. It's kind of weird. I get a lot of people who reach out and say, hey, I want to rent this place. Send me the lease agreement. And I'm like, you haven't even looked at it yet. So definitely somebody who communicates and asks questions. That's usually a pretty good indicator. Other qualities of a good tenant, of course, kind of the general stuff, high credit score, job history that's solid, or at least job income that's verifiable. I get a lot of people who lie about their job income or lie about their past living history, where they've lived, who their landlord was, or, if they owned a home before. So being able to verify all that information is important. Good credit score. I personally don't worry too much about like debts or anything like that. I mean, people have debts and that's just kind of the way it is. Yeah, good credit score. They communicate, they ask questions, good job and living history, residential living, where they've lived in the past. I don't know how to describe that. So yeah. Austin, any info on first-time homebuyer loans, assuming one qualifies? Is this a good option for those who may not have a lot to spend on down payment? Yeah, so the state of Utah actually did away with first-time homebuyer loans quite a ways back. So they don't have these like first-time homebuyer loans that everybody thinks they do anymore. They do have a replacement, which is kind of the same thing. It's just not, you don't have to be a first-time homebuyer to qualify for something like this. So the program that you're looking for, the most popular one, is a program called Utah Housing, which is where they take a regular FHA loan and they will actually, this Utah Housing Corporation will actually give you a second loan that will cover what would be your down payment on the house. So this equals up to 100% financing on the house. It can be a good thing if you don't have the money for a down payment. It's a great opportunity to get into the home and get started. But honestly, if you can put money down, if you can save up that money, it's going to be better to go with a regular FHA or regular conventional loan. Just because if you do this loan with Utah Housing, you do pay the second loan that they give you for what would be your down payment. You pay 2% interest. You pay 2% interest higher than what's on your first mortgage. So let's say your first mortgage, your interest rate is 3.5%. On your second mortgage, you're going to be paying 5.5%. You also have increased closing costs and a higher private mortgage insurance. So your fees to get this loan are going to be significantly higher. So the fees and the interest rate, kind of outweigh the cost, outweigh the benefit that you get from going this route. So honestly, if you can save up the $10,000 to $20,000 at least for a down payment and to cover some of your closing costs, that's a better route than going with Utah Housing. But I mean, worst case, Utah Housing, I've done, I've had a ton of clients go that route. It is great. as an option. It just kind of depends on your situation, what you're looking for, how long you plan to stay, if you're going to refinance the property. There's a lot of variables, so it kind of depends on a case-by-case basis. Generally speaking, it's a great way to get into a home, but if you can use a down payment, you're going to get a better deal and you're going to have a lower monthly payment. Let's see. What areas would you recommend for investment in multi-unit homes, 2 to 3 units? Yeah, you bet, Austin. Hope that was helpful. Let me know if you have questions about that a little bit further. I'd be happy to answer any specific questions, for your situation. So multi-unit homes. Yes, we do have multi-unit homes. They're typically bought and sold by investors. They're very competitive right now. So you will pay, if you find something on the market, you are going to pay top dollar for it. But it can be a great way to cut your mortgage in half. This is something I've talked about before on the channel. Kind of looking at real estate as an investment, as, not only just a place to live, but somewhere to invest your money and make an investment decision, can be life-changing. I've actually done this multiple times in numerous different houses myself. And it's been fantastic for myself. So, yes, they're out there. Yes, you're going to pay, a little bit of a premium for something like this. There are houses that are out there everywhere from Salt Lake to Murray. They're very popular in Mill Creek or Sugar House. You can find them in Sandy. In some of the newer areas, they're not as common. They are out there, but they're going to be newer construction. And so they get quite expensive. I mean, I've seen 4-plex units, which is 4 units in one parcel, for close to $1 million in Harriman. I think it was about $950. But there's also options. I've seen some in American Fork recently that was, I believe it was a triplex, 3 units like you had asked about, and it was like $650 on the price. So it's one of those things where you could buy it, live in 1 unit, rent out the other 2. Renting out the other 2 is going to cover, probably anywhere from, depending on how good the deal is, anywhere from 50 to 75%, maybe 80% of your mortgage. So it's kind of nice, if you don't mind having a next door neighbor or somebody in your basement or somebody above you. It's a great way to reduce your mortgage. Like I said, I've done this numerous times myself. So if you want to go that route, let me know. I'd be happy to give you some guidance on kind of what I've done for that. What other questions do we have? Anybody else got questions? Yeah, more videos coming. You're welcome. I hope that was helpful. More videos coming. We're going to have, like I said, videos on Park City, probably coming later in the summer. A lot of videos on the southwest part of Salt Lake County for cities like South Jordan, Riverton, Bluffdale, Harriman, West Jordan. And then I'll kind of spread into the rest of Salt Lake County further north and west. And then we'll do Utah County as well, just because there's so much growth going on there. I've still got to do Saratoga Springs, Eagle Mountain. Those are 2 areas that I've been in a lot recently that have not had a ton of, I haven't done a ton of videos on those just yet. So those will be coming. Just a matter of time of getting it all put together and getting it out there for you guys. Nancy's got a question for renting. What are some questions I should be asking on the posts on Trulia Zillow before going on a tour? Honestly, it's a lot of your, kind of your straightforward stuff, as far as like, hey, what's the rent amount? What kind of lease are you looking for? How soon are you looking to fill it? Is it vacant now? What utilities am I going to pay? If there's an HOA, do I pay the HOA or do you pay it? Those types of questions, just questions about the property. It doesn't need to be anything too particular, just any questions that you have about it. Work with them on trying to set up a showing. And also, I would say be more flexible on like filling out an application. So the way that a lot of applications are going now is that you can actually fill out the application for free right up front, which is going to give the landlord some information before, moving forward. So like what I do as the landlord, I always ask people to fill out the application first. There's no fee to fill out the initial part of the application. They just fill it out. And then I take that information. It will have their job history, where they've lived, what kind of car they drive, their emergency contact. It's going to have all this information that I can go in and verify first before actually going to see the place. So I would say that just be flexible on filling out that type of information, or at least providing it to the landlord or property manager, because it's going to make it easier if they can verify that up front. And then if you like it, then you go and see the place. If everything works out, the timing works, the place works, the rent amount works, then you can move forward with like credit and background check, which is when there's typically a fee associated with that. You complete that, and then you have the lease agreement to sign, and then that's it. So, Saratoga Springs is coming soon. Nancy, when touring, is there a checklist you have or certain things that you should be looking out for? From the tenant side, not necessarily. I mean, just looking out for like any repairs or maintenance that the landlord needs to do, because you don't want to be on the hook for those, and you also don't want to move in and then be constantly reminding the landlord to come and fix stuff. So just look for like damage or things that need to be replaced. See if they'll fix that before you move in, or if it has a ton of damage and they're not willing to fix it, then that might be something that you want to stay away from. Scott, new home builders you would recommend or to stay away from? Great question. I would recommend, on average, going with some of the bigger builders is going to be your better bet. So these are going to be builders like Toll Brothers, D.R. Horton, Richmond American, and then there's two others that are big builders here in the state. I don't believe they're nationwide. I don't believe they build anything outside of Utah. But here in the state, two other big builders are Ivory Homes and Edge Homes. If you look up Ivory, they're going to have super mixed reviews. Some people love them. Some people hate them. At the end of the day, they do have a reputation here as being the biggest builder in Utah. So they are going to have, a lot of homes out there. Some of their floor plans, are a little bit funky, I think, from what I've seen. But, still a good option to go with Ivory. Edge does build a good home. Edge is probably the second biggest local builder here. They build great homes, and they've got communities all over as well. So I think staying with some of the bigger builders is going to be better. They've got a reputation to protect. They know what they're doing. You're going to pay less. Actually, I've seen a lot of smaller builders try to jump in the space, especially recently. A ton of builders out there that I've never heard of that are jumping into the market trying to build homes. And I think what is happening is they're overpaying for land. They're overpaying for the construction process. And in order to break even or, hopefully make some money still, they are, trying to sell these homes for higher prices. And thus they are sitting on the market for longer than they should be. So I'm seeing that more often with smaller builders. I think there are some exceptions to that. With smaller builders, you can get a little bit more of a hands-on feel as opposed to just a big corporate systemized feel. But I think that going with a bigger builder, you've got a little bit more certainty in the process that it will be done right, because especially with these bigger builders like Ivory, almost all of their contractors are basically in-house, where they're just going from one Ivory home to the next. And it's the same thing at every single house. So the contractors know what they're doing. They know what type of, quality of work that the builder expects, and they deliver on it. So definitely stay with the bigger ones, in my opinion. Like I said, Toll Brothers is great. I love Toll Brothers. They build an excellent home. And the nice thing too, especially for people coming out of state, is they not only build a nice home, but it's not huge. They kind of build a little bit smaller home. Not that it's necessarily small, but just a smaller home than what you normally see here in Utah. But the quality is way up. So Toll Brothers, D.R. Horton, Richmond American, and then Edge and Ivory are the two local Utah builders that I'd recommend looking into first. There are some other companies out there that, will still build a great home, but those five are definitely where I would start. Adding on to Scott's question, is there any vacant land or lots available to purchase and build a brand new home on versus buying an already built house? Would it be cheaper overall this way? You can find land and lots. Typically, they're going to be more expensive, and the tough thing is going to be finding a builder who will build a one-off property for you. Most of the builders who are doing these bigger builders are only working in the subdivisions that they have because they can control everything. They don't want to go and build for just one person, in a random subdivision. It just doesn't fit what they're trying to do. So the builders who are doing that are typically going to charge you quite a bit more. Or you're going to have to be building some type of custom home, typically, $800,000 or more, to find a builder who's willing to take on the time commitment and the risk associated with building just one single home. So there are builders out there who will do it. It is not going to be cheaper. You're going to pay more. You're going to pay a premium that way. And, I'd kind of say plan on building. You're going to have to build a house that's like $800,000 or more if you want to go and buy buy one lot and have somebody build on it. Typically, how many months would it take to build? If you go with that situation we just talked about, buying a piece of land and then having a builder come and build on it, honestly, you're probably anywhere from 10 to 18 months, depending on how long the design process takes, how long it takes to get the plans put together and reviewed and submitted to the city, get them approved, and then get the contractors lined up. Could be 10 to 18 months. If you go with a builder who's building homes in a subdivision, it can be, typically you're probably like 6 to 9 months if you start from scratch, because they've got everything lined up. They've already got their floor plans set up and approved through the city. So it should move pretty quickly if you're going with a builder who's already in the market and is building stuff that's out there. So I hope that helps. Any questions here? I've been going for an hour. This is awesome. This has been a really good experience, just kind of answering questions that sometimes I don't normally get to, that, I don't have the opportunity to actually answer, put into a video and answer questions like this. So this is a great opportunity to answer some different questions. Any questions here? Drop them in the comments. Yes, it is expensive to do that. Custom homes here, it's more common, especially like in Wasatch and Summit counties, which is to the east where Park City is, Heber City, Midway. Much more common to find custom homes up there, but it is not going to be cheap, that's for sure. Bobby has a question. If you own a house, do you give it to property management to be rented, or do you do it yourself? Bobby, I do everything myself right now because I'm local and because, real estate's my full-time gig. I kind of already have a hand in what's going on in the market on a day-to-day basis. So I manage everything myself, but if you were interested in investing in real estate and wanted to rent something, you can do it yourself. I would expect to say, I would say to expect to put anywhere from, probably 5 to maybe 10 hours per month into being a landlord. This can, this is to factor in the accounting side of thing, tracking your income and your expenses, coordinating with contractors, coordinating with tenants, repairs, anything like that. I mean, it can be anywhere from 5 to 10 hours per month. Some months, it's like 1 or 2 hours just to kind of, put your income and expenses into a spreadsheet, and that's it. So it varies, based on what you've got going on. It can be more time. Sometimes it's pretty simple from month to month. Definitely turning over a unit, when you've got somebody new moving in, that's what takes the most time when it comes to being a landlord. I think that kind of also on that note, I love talking about real estate and investing in real estate specifically. So if you're thinking about moving and investing in real estate here in Salt Lake, I think you've got awesome potential for increased rents and increased growth. I always say to invest for cash flow. You want to make sure that the cash flow coming in from the property can at least cover your mortgage and then provide a little bit extra to cover some of those repairs that are inevitable, that are going to come up on the property. So you want to at least, you don't want to be underwater on your month-to-month payments. So definitely have enough cash flow. And if you can make a little bit of money each month, that's even better. But there's a ton of opportunity for growth and appreciation here in the market. If you are a landlord, you kind of hope that rents will go up. That's going to help increase your monthly cash flow, and also the appreciation that you can get in a property can be pretty massive and a great way to build a retirement fund, and invest in real estate and have a long-term game plan there for your financial future. So What other questions do you guys have? Any questions about Salt Lake City proper? Like I said, I've got a new video coming out later this week on schools, and then we're gonna have another one about Salt Lake versus Provo, some of the differences between the cities. That one will probably come out next week sometime, so keep an eye out for that. Question here. A lot of Airbnbs, is that a viable source of income to help pay for a mortgage? Yeah, so I've done Airbnb myself one time. We only got to do it for about 3 months. It was right before this whole pandemic hit. That was something that I was doing as a host. It was, a viable source of income. Yeah, for sure. It was definitely produced a lot of income. Most of the people coming here to Utah are going, if they're going to be staying in Salt Lake area, they're probably coming because they have family here. They're coming for a work conference, or they're coming here to ski. Those are kind of the three reasons people come here and want to stay in an Airbnb. So if you have a property that meets one of those three needs, it's close to a conference center, or it's close to the ski resorts or something like that, then definitely Airbnb is a great option. If you own a house, let's say somewhere in West Valley, and it's kind of just in a neighborhood here or there, it's, in my opinion, it's probably not worth the headache of going through the Airbnb process, because it is kind of like a part-time job. I mean, you've got to coordinate with these people coming into town. They have questions. You've got to go and clean the unit. You've got to pay somebody to do it at least. So, is it the best option? If you live if you got a house in West Valley or something, it's probably not the best option. But if you have a great property that's next to the ski resorts, then definitely Airbnb can be a great source of income. You can definitely earn more than if you just rent it out to a long-term tenant, but it does come with a little bit more risk, higher risk, higher reward. You can make more money, but pending another pandemic hitting the entire world, which hopefully doesn't happen, you can see a lot more fluctuation month to month from Airbnb, just depending on how many bookings you've got. So hope that answers your question. Let's see. I wonder if you guys have any interest in some of the communities that are further up north. I've helped a number of people relocate here for that are in the Air Force. We have the Hill Air Force Base, which is in kind of south of Ogden, right on the border of Weber and Davis County. A lot of people relocating here for that. I haven't done a ton of videos up there just because it's a little bit of a drive for me, and I've got stuff that's closer and more popular. So I haven't gone up there, but I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts if you do want to see more videos about that. I'd also love to hear about just general questions. Leave a comment on this video or any of the other videos that I put out. I'd love to make videos about anything that you guys want to hear about. After a while, I don't want to keep repeating myself. So I want new ideas, and I want to know what you guys have questions on, so that I can continue providing the best help possible. Austin, how's Logan? So Logan's mainly Logan's about 2 hours south of Salt Lake, 2 hours north of Salt Lake. It's mostly a college town. That's where Utah State University is. So mostly a college town, a lot of younger kids there. Cache County, which is where it's located, is also known for kind of farming and ranching. So smaller town feel, summers can feel a little bit quiet there, but during the school year, it is pretty busy. When it comes to housing there, it's pretty cheap, because it's a little bit further out, smaller town. Housing is cheaper there. But when it comes to the city itself, I know a lot of people who love it up there. They have a great school system. I think their school system actually ranks one of the highest in the state. And, a lot of people love Logan. So it's close to Bear Lake as well, which is an awesome lake to go and play out. Scott, you should do a video on tourist attractions in the area, like Antelope Island, Antelope Island. Yeah, definitely. Antelope Island is kind of funny because it's definitely a tourist attraction out there. In my opinion, there's a lot of bugs and, great views. It's an awesome place to go and get views. Just be prepared to be eaten alive by bugs and spiders that are out there. But yeah, definitely. I appreciate the insight. and the recommendation for doing more tourist attractions. I'm going to try to do some videos about like Lagoon, which is one of the amusement parks here. I've got a ton of videos coming in the winter about the ski resorts. I've had a ton of requests for that, and we're going to have a little bit of a I'm actually doing a collaboration with another YouTuber here who runs a channel specifically about snowboarding. So we're going to be doing something like that. We're going to be doing some collaborations on the ski resorts here. So that'll be awesome. It's just kind of the wrong time of year being that it's the middle of summer, but there'll be ski resort videos coming. Like I said, Lagoon and some of those other tourist attractions, a lot of that stuff. I'm going to try to do like the aquarium. I'm going to do some of the stuff downtown. I'm going to do Park City, of course. There's a ton to do up there. So definitely will be, kind of some more tourist focused or things to do type focused videos coming soon. So, all right, guys, this is the last call for any last questions. If you guys have questions, let me know. Happy to stick around and answer them. Otherwise, we're going on an hour here. So we'll wrap this up here pretty soon. By the way, I love it when you guys reach out, call me, text me, email me. I try to, get a hold of me any way that you need to. I try to get back to you as soon as possible and answer your questions about Salt Lake, whether you're buying, whether you're selling. I'm happy to help any way that I can. I'm happy to give some guidance as far as areas and, just give you my professional opinion and my local opinion on what area is going to be best for you. I was born and raised here in Utah. I've lived all over Salt Lake County. Numerous times, actually ended up back living in Sandy, which is where the same city I grew up in. So I have a pretty good feel on Salt Lake County and even the other areas. I mean, I've been going to a lot of these areas for my entire life. So I give you my opinion on what area is going to be best for you. And I always recommend coming out for a trip. If you've never been here, definitely come out, see what it's all about, see if you like it, see if you like the mountains, if you like the elevation, if you like the people, if you like the housing, if you like the job opportunities, everything about it. Come out, see what it's all about. And if it's a fit for you and it's something you want to do, then we can definitely start moving forward on, setting up the home buying process if that's the route you want to go. Or like I said, trying to find something to rent first. That's always an option as well. So all right. Well, I haven't seen any other questions come through. So awesome. I appreciate you guys sticking around on the video here. I hope this was helpful for you. I'm going to try and do this at least like once or twice a month, do these live Q&As. So bring your questions if you have them. As always, drop a comment on any video that I do and I'll get back to you. And otherwise, stay tuned for the next video later this week and I'll catch you guys later.